too much grammar. But wait a minute. Usually what she's doing here, what the authors are doing is they're reinforcing one grammar point from different angles. And this is not in a dry, boring way, is it? As you can see just by glancing at the page, there are many interactive exercises and ideas to it. And we'll delve into these in just a second. Okay? You get how that works?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the second portion. So the first portion is vocabulary and pictures and picture dictionary. The second is grammar. Turn the page 122 and 123. What do you see here? Well, there's another picture, and it's called the big picture. So somewhere in the middle of the unit, and this holds true for also books 3 and 4, is a section called the big picture. And the big picture is the author's favorite section, by the way, of the book. They love these sections. Its purpose is to kind of stop right there after you've been working on the vocabulary and the grammar and doing some listening exercises, and stop with the students and kind of recap, kind of synthesize, pull everything together that you've done so far. Where do we stand on this? What can my students do with transportation so far? What can they talk about? Can they use these structures we've been working with, etc.? So these 2 pages of big picture are kind of a fun way to assess informally your students how they're doing. So do you start to see the flow now? Vocabulary first, then grammar, and now we have this little kind of mini assessment exercise. But these are fun. Okay, then after that on page 124, what comes next on page 124? Reading. You have reading. We'll talk a little bit more about this in detail. And I don't know if you remember seeing this. We read this one, I think, last time about bicycles around the world in Portland and etc. We won't read that again now, but just to give you an idea. And then on page 125, the last, not the last page, but the next section is writing. Well, we need to work on that 4th skill, listening, speaking, reading, writing. We have to have the writing in there as well. Then the chapter finishes with, on page 126 and 127, what's called the putting English into action, or English in action section. And this is the, if you're familiar with lesson plans, this is the final stage of a good lesson plan. It's really the application stage of a lesson plan. You've prepared the students, you've practiced, now you give them something a little bit more open-ended. You try to see what can they do with what you've taught them to this point. Does that make sense? So the putting into action is the point where they really should be able to take this and go with it. If your students are struggling at this point, what does that mean? Oops, maybe you better go back and reteach a little bit and do a little bit more. Okay? Do you understand the flow of a unit now? That's pretty much the flow of a unit, no matter which level of the series you're using. That's pretty much the flow. Okay, I'm going to do a little overview. Let's take a little deviation here and talk about vocabulary. Okay, this is a presentation I've done so many times, but I'm going to just take sections from this because the authors of English in Action believe very strongly vocabulary is an important thing to really front load with your students before they get into a unit. You know, if you heard the term front loading, if you're teaching the K-12, you've probably heard that before. Before you get into a unit, you want to warm them up. You want to make sure that they are aware of the vocabulary they're going to encounter. If we're going to be talking about transportation, isn't it a good idea to kind of get them familiar with some words from transportation or find out what they already know? Okay, so that's very important to do. So you want to do that. But let's just give you some theoretical underpinnings of teaching vocabulary. I'm going to show you some numbers up here. And this is regarding vocabulary, and you tell me what you think these numbers refer to with vocabulary. I know we're not math teachers, at least I'm not. These are just some statistics that have been gathered by researchers in the field. What do you think a million refers to? A million what?
Dollars.
Okay, let's talk in terms of words. A million.
Words in a dictionary?
A million words in a dictionary. That's a very good guess. But it's not right. Want to make another guess? A million words.
A lifetime.
Working vocabulary. Okay, you're thinking as well, but no, that's a little bit too high still. 1,000,000 words. Anybody want to make another guess? What's 1,000,000 words? What does that refer to?
Words frequency, words that are repeated.
Words that are repeated. Wow. Actually, that's pretty high. That's way too high. Let's go down. 1,000,000 is the number of words in English. Okay? If you look at the data banks of English, how many words are there in English? And English probably has more than any, I'm sure it has more than any other because we're such a diverse language. There are approximately 1,000,000 words in English. Now, do we know them all? No, actually 140,000. If you go, well, libraries have changed, they're disappearing. But in the old days, when I went to a library, you go in the front door of the library, and there was a big dictionary, Webster's dictionary or somebody's dictionary right there, It was huge, and no one ever looked at it. It would just sit there gathering dust, but it had pages after pages. That has approximately 140,000 words. Okay, now are you starting to get the concept? So there are 1,000,000 words in the whole English language, 140,000 in that. Do you all know 140,000 words? I don't. No way. I don't know 140,000 words. So, what do you think 20,000 refers to?
Average person?
Average person, that's a good guess. Close, but not quite.
Native speaker.
Native speaker, that's close. It's actually a typical U.S. college, and it's usually a freshman, has about a 20,000 word vocabulary. Well, we're beyond that. We all speak more than that because we've gone to college, etc. Okay. Now, actually, when I do this up in LA, the people from UCLA graduates say, "Wow, that may be somebody from USC, but we know." So, anyway, so a U.S. college student, when they're starting off, usually has about 20,000 word vocabulary. If that's the case, what does 3 to 5 refer to?
How many times you have to see or know?
Frequency. That's a good one. How often do you have to run into a word before you retain it? 3 to 5. Actually, that's a good point. Let's deviate here. It's actually more than that. Anybody want to hazard a guess? I hear 3 to 5. What do you think? Before you retain a word.
Or 75 times.
I hear 50. I hear 50 over here. Do I hear
75?
I hear 75. I hear 70. Do I hear 100? What do we have?
Option.
Actually, it depends on the researcher. We have 2 researchers that are well known, and they said about a dozen times you have to hear a word in context, about a dozen times. But there's Keith Foltz, who's going to be speaking for us this Saturday at North Orange County. I asked him, I said, "Keith, what do you think?" He says, "Eric, I think it's more like, anywhere from 25 to 50 times."
Is this a native speaker learning?
Yeah, native speaker
Okay.
learning, okay? Approximately, that's what you kind of have to hear for us. If we're just going around trying to learn a word, that's what we have to hear it in context, okay? So that's a lot of times frequency. Now, what's 3 to 5? 3 to 5 is words per day that a typical American kid, English-speaking kid, learns per day. Now, we're going to get to that 20,000. So I have a little 17-month-old daughter. Well, she's not going to reach on. She's still that kind of stuff. But in about a year or so, she's going to be picking up about 3 or 5 words a day. Okay, that's pretty typical for kids. But what does this mean? If the kids, native speakers, are learning that many, how many words a day do your students have to learn? So exactly, are you getting the idea here how important vocabulary is to you people? That you've got to really pump some vocabulary out to your students, because native speakers are learning 3 to 5 words a day when they're in education. How about your students? They're going to have to learn more than 3 to 5 words a day to catch up. Okay, just a couple other fun things here. 2,000 are the most frequently used words in English. 2,000 words. What does that mean? 80%? These are related here. Believe it or not, in conversation, in English, 80% of our conversation, we use those 2,000 words. Those 2,000 words make up 80% of our daily conversation. 2,000 words. So what are the ramifications as teachers? Teach those words.
Yeah.
Teach those 2,000 words. It gives your students a leg up. Okay? Where can you find those words? Well, we've got them in some of our dictionaries. You can go online and just Google it, that kind of stuff. And English in Action, for the most part, we don't highlight them or anything. For the most part, throughout those, actually, the first 3 books, I believe, pretty much covers those 2,000 words pretty sufficiently. So you get a pretty good grasp. Okay, the last thing, just so you know, and this is regarding the transitions. Another big thing for emphasis now has been a lot of focus on academic word list. If you want your students to be successful in college or university or even in high school, they need to learn these 570 word families to become successful in academics. Because the words of academic are different from the words of the workplace. Okay. I can spend more. We're not going to go too far on this. Let me just see high frequency words we're talking about that. Oh, here's a little fun little quiz. What do you think the top 10 words in English are as far as usage?
Yes, no, the.
Yes, no, the, I. There you go.
Google.
Okay. All right, you get the idea. Well, some of these I wouldn't even count these as words, you know. But they are, you know, possibly possess this. Okay. All right. So what the point of this is, the reason I'm telling you all this is because let's go back in our book to that Unit 9, and let's go to that first page on page 114. Thank you. Transportation. So when you start teaching your unit, I would like you to start thinking, okay, vocabulary first. How can I front load with some vocabulary? How can I warm them up with some vocabulary? What can I do to get them interested in the vocabulary for transportation? So let's just brainstorm right now. If you were teaching this class on, well, tomorrow, what might you do to warm them up to this? Any ideas?
How do you get to school?
How do you get to school? Okay.
Show them the picture without the words, and then that's right.
Show them the pictures without the
See what
words.
they already know.
See if they already know. So just have them say the words they already know. Very good. What's another thing you could do?
Ask them for different types of vehicles.
What are different types of vehicles for transportation? Very good. What's another one? Did I do this one last time for you guys, where you just repeat and point for a second for a moment? Okay. And it sounds really stupid and simple, but let's just do it right now. I want you to point to the word. I'm going to only say the word twice. Okay. You ready? Number one, jitensha. Jitensha. Number two, karuma. Karuma. I don't see you doing it. Number three, basu. Basu.
Oh, well, that's.
Number four, hikoki. Hikoki.
This is Japanese.
That's Japanese, okay? You guys get the idea? Okay, now, I just did that for effect because sometimes we think that these exercises are too simple for our students, but they're actually good exercises to do because you're not native speakers of Japanese, and maybe some of you know a few words, but it was hard. You don't get it. And so just think of them learning English. They don't know all these words. So even just an exercise for low-level students as simple as listening and pointing is a good exercise to do. Okay, you see how that works? Okay, in fact, what I'm going to do right now, you could.
I shouldn't snow. You just use the stove.
Oh, what?
Okay, do we have enough to go around?
Yeah, and I have,
More over here.
we can make two glasses. Are you sure we can?
Okay, what I'm giving you is a handout that was put together by the authors on some tips and techniques to use while teaching these sections out of English in Action. Okay, so let's just look at that. See how it's broken down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections on the 2 pages? Do you see that? The first is like the picture dictionary, then you got practicing grammar, then you got the big picture, reading, writing our stories, okay? And remember, in each unit, there are those 6 sections. So this is like additional exercises that you can use in addition to the teacher's guide suggestions that are here. So let's just go through a couple of those for the big picture just to see how well you like them. Let's just look at that page number 114, and you can see the first one I just did, right? Number 1 under picture dictionary, listen and repeat and point, okay? And basically that's what I did, but I did it in Japanese, okay? So there's exercise there. Number 2, categorize. How would you do this one? Well, we could take this picture right here, and I could, I'm not gonna write on this board, I guess I could, but I could say over here on this side,
Fast.
fast.